Hey everyone, welcome to the sixth session of the Automation Studio Fundamental Series. And today we have Michelle to go over the data management and segment creation using the Automation Studio activities. And thank you, Michelle, for continuing to share your expertise with the group. And thanks everyone for continuing to learn and then continuing to attend these user group sessions. Just a note on the user group. The Phoenix user group is now renamed to Salesforce Global Bootcamp Group. I'm going to put the new link. The old link still works, but just make sure that you have the new link bookmarked as well. So all the upcoming events you can find on the new link. And as usual, the recordings will be uploaded to the YouTube channel at the rate MC Learning Camp. I'm posting that as well in the chat window. And if you have any questions, please post them in the chat window and Michelle can address along the way or whatever you feel comfortable, Michelle. If you want to handle them at the end, you're welcome to. With that, I will turn it over to you, Michelle.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Libby. Awesome. Let's get started. So my name is Michelle Medina, for those who may not know me. So I've participated in a few of these boot camps, led a few sessions in Journey Builder, Data Cloud boot camps, AmScript boot camp. It's great to have those resources on YouTube, and this session will also be on YouTube. So excited to get started and talk about managing data and creating segments within Automation Studio, how you can leverage Automation Studio, the activities in Automation Studio, again, to manage your data and create those segments. So we'll first start with data management. We'll talk about key features of data management, specifically within Automation Studio, some common use cases you can see on how some of those activities that are in Automation Studio can be used for data management, and then some best practices as we go along the different activities. And similar with segmentation, we'll walk through those key features, some common use cases and best practices as well. And then we should have time quickly I'll go over a quick demo of some of those activities that we've talked about here and put them into action. And then we should have, again, some time for questions at the end. And as JB said, definitely send those in the chat and we can walk through each of those questions at the end. Great. So with data management, right? So what's the purpose of data management, specifically again within Automation Studio, is we want to automate those data flows, those processes in Marketing Cloud, right? So Automation Studio gives you the ability to centralize the data prep, right, for campaigns, for segmentation, for reporting. So data management is a key feature, that key topic that is crucial and important to be able to, build your segmentation, have, your email campaigns, your journey campaigns, your multi-channel campaigns, and also a report. Without clean data, things can get challenging, right? Your campaigns, your reporting, your data analysis gets challenging. So again, the key features within Automation Studio, right? So Automation Studio has a drag and drop interface. With data management, right, we can support both batch processing and real-time automations. And then also it integrates cohesively with SQL, data extracts and data filters as well. So we'll first start with the SQL query activity. The SQL query activity is a very robust feature. You can use this query or this activity to create new data extensions, manipulate data in your within multiple data extensions using SQL. So common use cases could be combining multiple data extensions and getting one data extension out of the few different data extensions that you want to combine. You can combine that by joining based off of usually a primary key, right? So Salesforce contact ID is a common primary key that's used within data extensions. So that's how you can join multiple data extensions and get that ultimate final list. You could duplicate records using SQL, and then also you can segment dynamically, right? As mentioned, SQL is a much robust tool, and you can do a lot of powerful things. So some examples could be segment by engagement, email engagement, or, a customer's purchase behavior, past behavior, and so forth. And then just the best practice here, especially because some queries can get complex. You should test your queries in Query Studio before actually running them in Automation Studio. So Query Studio is, if you don't have it in your business unit yet, you can, it's in the App Exchange, and it should be free download. And it's a great tool to help you test what your query would output. So you can see how many records or examples of records that it would output, or if, there could be an issue that we're troubleshooting and there's no records being displayed. So it's a good tool. Instead of having to run the full automation, you can just run it in Query Studio, and it gives you an example of what that would look like. So here, just wanted to quickly walk through a query example, right, that you could be used, within for data management. So you'll see at the top, just have a screenshot of a query. And then the select clause, what it's doing here, it's retrieving the email address field, and also grabbing the latest purchase date, which is that max function for each customer. The from clause is really just specifying, right, the data extension, which is the source, right? So for this example, it's a data extension called customers. And then your where clause is filtering the data to only include customers who have spent above $500. And then the group by clause is grouping the results by an email address to make sure there's only one row per customer. And then that max function, as mentioned earlier, it's just finding the most recent purchase date for each customer. So once you run this query in either in Query Studio or run in Automation, it would give you a list of customers who have spent more than $500, and then also showing that one row per customer, per email address, with their most recent purchase date or recent purchase. Now jumping to, I would say, the second common activity used for data management. And especially also, you'll see with these data management activities, it goes hand in hand with segmentation, right? So these activities that we're seeing here, we'll see within segmentation as well. But again, different use cases, different ways you can use them. And specifically for filter activity, you can create filtered segments, right? Filtered groups using drag and drop compared to SQL, right? SQL is more code heavy. This would give you that alternative option of a no code solution where it's a drag and drop criteria where you can really it's really dragging and dropping your data extension fields. And I'll show you an example into the canvas and filtering based off of the specific attributes that you need to filter on. So again, it gives you that alternative. Depending on skill sets, you might not be as comfortable with SQL. This can give you the alternative. I will say there is, the more complex your criteria is, the harder it might be to execute it with a filter activity. That's why SQL definitely is a more robust tool to use. But you could do a lot with filters as well. So some common use cases would be, filter customers by location, again, by their engagement or certain preferences that they have. And then also these data filters that you create, being able to reuse them, right? So for recurring automations, for campaigns, similar campaigns, there's a segment that always, can be used in multiple campaigns. It's a great tool to have be able to reuse these filters within other automations. And then best practices really is they can get just naming conventions, right? So to easily identify your filter activity. So once you create a filter activity, a data extension is also created. So having a clean naming convention for better organization is super helpful. And then also just to regularly review and optimize your filters, right? Your criteria can change, your field values that you filtered on can change. Your criteria should now include more segmented option. So again, it's a good practice to regularly review and optimize those filters, especially within those recurring automations. Here's an example of a data extension filter, right? So this is a basic filter. What I have a screenshot here on the left-hand side are all your data extension fields. So when you create a data filter, it's actually not in Automation Studio. It lives in Email Studio, and we'll walk through that quickly. But again, the automation piece to it is where we jump into Automation Studio for. So for data filters, you always have a source for your data. So you either can filter based off of profile attributes or standard data extensions. So you have that source data extension, and from that source data extension that you choose, those are the fields that you'll be able to leverage in your filter criteria. So if that source data, if you're looking for a field and that source data extension does not exist in that data extension, you will not be able to filter on it. So again, only the fields available and from your source data extension will be available to filter on. So you see here, this is again a basic one. So you'll see this example here is we're looking for a customer who has their account status as open and they've linked their bank, right? So they have this could be an example for, you know, a financial institution, financial app, right? We want to look at customers who have an open active account, but also have already linked their bank, and maybe we're pushing them to the next step in the campaign. So again, you would drag and drop each field, and then you would type in those values that you're looking, that would identify your criteria. Something important to keep note here is, right, you are typing in those values. So it is super important to just double check and make sure there aren't any typos or the values, really that the values exactly matching. You know, any mismatch will give you unexpected results. So then jumping more to, you'll see, you might have noticed on the left-hand side, you'll see the data extension field. Then further down, you'll see data relationships, and you'll see measures. So measures is also a great feature to use within your data filters. It's a common use case as well. And like I said, you can really filter or manage your data with SQL just as you can with these data filters. So measures are really a unit of subscriber behavior. And within your business unit, you'll have these already system defined that measures that should be exist already in there. And they would cover most use cases. So you can see that there's, you know, for example, total emails not clicked in the last 30 days, total emails not open in the last 30 days, right? So you can manage your data using SQL query and query for those who haven't opened an email in the last 30 days, or you can really use a measure, right? Depending on your comfort level, your business goals, right? Your requirements, you're able to use both. So as mentioned here, you'll see that we've just kind of enhanced this filter a little bit, made it more of a using those measures, right? So you can see here, we still are looking for those customers who have an account status of open, and then they've also linked their bank. But then we also want to make sure that we only want to get the list of customers who have opened at least one email in the last 30 days and have not clicked on an email in the last 30 days. So again, these measures are, again, super helpful to get those engagement, email engagement behaviors and being able to manage your data that way. All right, so jumping to the import file activity. So this activity is leveraged to import external data into Marketing Cloud. So it'll, you know, common use case really is you can automate some customer data imports from external systems and have that pulled into a Marketing Cloud data extension. You can also upload any promotional campaign specific data. Again, that's probably any external data. You're able to import that into a data extension. So best practices, there are naming conventions and file formats that you do need to follow. So for example, it has to be a CSV file. There's naming conventions within the file name that you need to follow. So just make sure to follow all those best practices when using the import file activity. And then also mapping your fields correctly. And again, validating your data before the import, right? Make sure it's clean data, make sure this data is going to be leveraged within Marketing Cloud, and then mapping those fields correctly from your external data extension to your Marketing Cloud data extension. And then I also wanted to talk about 2 more activities within Automation Studio that can be leveraged for data management. So the file transfer activity really is just moving data between Marketing Cloud into external FTP locations. So a common use case, right? You can schedule exports, data extension exports to external systems. And then the data extracts data from Marketing Cloud for analysis, right? So external analysis. So again, a use case here would be exporting campaign performance for, BI tools and being able to analyze that data outside of Marketing Cloud. So before we jump into segmentation, I wanted to run through some of those common data management use cases and what activities you might use to be able to complete these use cases, right? To be able to leverage those Automation Studio activities. So the segmentation by behavior is a really good example of how we can use the SQL query activity to create a segment of customers who, have purchased in the last 30 days. So you'll see here again, just a quick screenshot of what that query would look like. Another example really is automating your data for journeys. So you can schedule data import, or you can schedule also your data extension filter activities to make sure that your segments or your targeted audience is always up to date. So in journeys, you can have a data extension source or entry source. So and that entry source or that data extension can be tied to an automations, right? So if you are grouping your customers through either a data filter or a SQL, and it needs to be constantly refreshed and up to date, this is a good example of how to use either the data extension filter or SQL query, or even the data import to make sure that that segment is current before they get triggered into a journey. Another common use case is managing those large data sets. So this is where SQL really excels. So you can combine multiple data extensions, organize them, filter for other data extensions, and be able to filter down to your specific criteria using SQL queries. I will say the larger your data sets or the more data extensions you might need to combine, that's where SQL is, I would say, the most common activity to use. Again, data filters can accomplish it, but again, depending on your criteria, the complexity of it, it can get a bit challenging to get your results. And then the last common use case specifically for SQL queries within data management is data cleanup and deduplication. So let's say for this example shown here, you only really want to retain the last engagement for each email address. So you can use a SQL query within Automation Studio to be able to get those results. Okay. And then just some best practices around data management, right? The first piece being planning and organization. So you want to always have the descriptive names for all your activities and all your automations to make sure they're easily identifiable, what their use is for, have a description there, and then also create a folder structure just to have that better organization, easy to find, because there are lots of business units out there that have hundreds of automations running. So the better structure you have in terms of organization, the easier it'll be to maintain. And then performance optimization. So this is specifically with large data extensions, you might have to use intermediate tables. So basically just breaking the queries down into smaller data extensions, so then you can get your final result. For large queries, you might run into a runtime error. So that brings me to my second point. So any large automation, you might need to break them down into smaller processes, again, to reduce that runtime. You don't really want automations running super long. It should be a minute or two to be able, again, to have that performance optimization. And then testing and validation. So this is super important and just ensure you're getting the right results within your data management activities. So like I've mentioned, test your SQL queries in Query Studio. It gives you a preview of what your data extension would look like. And then if you can, using smaller data sets for initial runs or test data sets, just to see again what that data would look like. And then your last piece here is the monitoring and maintenance. You always have the ability to monitor your automation logs, right? You see successes, errors, skip times. You can even set notifications, right? To if there's an error, you want an email sent to someone to just notify them that there was an error. You can do that. And it's important, again, just to make sure you're keeping on top of your automations, ensuring that they're running successfully. And then again, always regularly review and optimize any automation workflows. Again, maybe pause automations that might not be in use anymore. And just making sure that the criteria or any automations that you use are up to date. So then let's jump to segmentation. And again, you're going to see the same activities, but more specifically within segmentation. So segmentation really is dividing your audience into those groups based on specific behaviors, attributes, preferences, again, for that targeted communication in your campaign. So why is segmentation so important? You can improve your personalization, tailor that customer journey, that campaign specifically to that customer. And then you boost engagements and conversion rates, and also just enables you to have that data-driven, marketing strategy, being able to optimize based on data-driven behavior. And then how will Automation Studio help with this? Like I mentioned, we'll still see SQL queries, data filters, and filter activities are the key features here for segmentation. So with the query activity, you can, like I've mentioned, SQL query activity, robust feature, and you can use this for more advanced segmentation. Some common use cases for segmentation could be by demographics, right? So location, age, region, behavioral segmentation. So your last purchase, your email engagement. And another common use cases is combining multiple data extensions for that final result for your custom audience. Right? You can have your purchase data within one data extension, but you also want to include some email engagement or other engagement behavior. With SQL, you're able to join those two data extensions to output that final data extension. And then, like I mentioned, best practices, right? Test that query in Query Studio, and also for your output data extension. So that final data extension, again, use descriptive names. Make sure, again, it's easily identifiable and understands what this data extension is used for. So again, looking at a query example. So this query will segment customers who've been active within the last 30 days. So the select clause at the top is grabbing the email address field, the first name and last name field from that customer's data extension. So that source data. And then that where clause is filtering to only include the customers who've been active in the last 30 days. So again, good example, basic example of segmentation if you looking for how to segment customers based on last activity within 30 days. Or again, you can change that date range as needed. So I wanted to talk about the data filters and contact builder. They work cohesively with Automation Studio again, as we want to automate these processes, these segmentation processes. So data filters will allow you to segment, just directly within Email Studio and then automate it in Automation Studio. The common use cases, again, you can also use this for quick ad hoc segmentation, right? For any one-off campaigns or data analysis that you're quickly looking to grab. And then you can also create smaller audiences from those master tables. So those master data extensions, where maybe all of your source of truth holds, but you only really want to grab a subset of those audiences. Data filters are great for that. And then contact builder. So it enables segmentation, again, based on complex rules and then audience modeling, right? So some common use cases is segmentation in the multi-level for multiple cross-channel campaigns, right? You can, again, combine multiple data sources like your CRM data, your purchase data. In Contact Builder, you have your synchronized, that's where you set up your synchronized data extension. So that's that data coming in from Salesforce. And again, you can use those synchronized data extensions, that data in the synchronized data extensions to have that being combined with other data extensions. So again, to get that final subset group. The filter activity specifically for segmentation, right? It has that drag and drop interface. So you can create segments based on those predefined roles, like location, preferences for a certain product. You can, again, combine multiple criteria, but the more complex that criteria gets, it might be a bit challenging to use filters. And then best practices is right to reuse your filters within those recurring campaigns. And then again, regularly review that to make sure it aligns with your evolving campaign goals. And then some common segmentation use cases is the first one here is a life cycle segmentation, right? So maybe you want to group customers by their life cycle stage. So you can have 3 groups, right? A new group, an engaged group, and then an inactive group. And you can segment, again, using data filters. You can use SQL query again for this. You want to segment your new subset to be those who have subscribed within the last 30 days. Your engaged audience could be those who have opened emails in the last 90 days. And then your inactive is no email activity opens nor clicks within the last 6 months. You can also segment geographically, right? So you can target customers on specific regions based off of for local promotions. And again, be able to filter your audiences specifically to those regions that you're looking for, country, state, as specific as you need to be. You definitely be able to do that as well. And then also you can segment based off of behavior. So for this example here, this is a SQL query where you can segment users who have purchased in the last 30 days. Again, you'll see the fields that you're pulling in your select clause, your from purchases, which is your source data extension, and then your where clause, which is filtering for that last purchase date to be in the last 30 days. And then you can also use segment for demographics, right? So you can filter customers based on age, again, using a data filter or SQL. And then engagement-based segmentation. So again, queries or filters using those measures that we spoke about. You can filter based off who've opened, who have clicked emails in the past number of days. Something to keep in mind is that the data you have access to is in the last 6 months. So for data filters and queries, you can leverage your data views, which again has all of that data. For if you're using SQL queries and data filters, again, you can use those measures. You can create your own measures. So I think the system defines may stick to 30 days, but again, you can create on the past 90 days, for example. All right. So some best practices for data segmentation is planning. First step is really planning your goals. Start with clear goals. Start with, are we looking for increased engagement? Are we looking for revenue growth, reactivation? Plan those out, have those set before you start mapping out your segmentation criteria. And then before you start building those automations, right? Map out what that criteria would look like before building. And then optimizing performance. Again, the more complex criteria is lots of automations running. You want to make sure each activity, each automation is performing well. So for SQL actually a good tip here is avoid using the select the star, right? You'll see the star there. So what that means is really it's grabbing. This is a common for Marketing Cloud. This is a, for outside of Marketing Cloud SQL, this clause with start is really grabbing all fields within your data extension. But you want to be within Marketing Cloud and automation. So you want to be specific about the required fields. So if you remember what those SQL queries look like, those examples, you'll see that the fields were always stated out in your select clause. It was select email address, select first name. The star, so if your data extension, let's say you do use this, and your data extension now has 2 or 3 more new fields, it won't catch that. So again, being specific about those fields would make it easier for your team, for you to essentially, know when it's time to update, to make sure all the fields are being included. And then for large data sets, you will have to break your queries down into smaller queries to avoid those runtime errors. Again, the more complex, the larger the data sets, you may need to start breaking those queries down. And you'll notice that even, let's say, your query work in Query Studio, sometimes you get to start building it in Automation Studio, and you want to run it once just to check, right? To check if it was a successful run. Sometimes it won't succeed, or it would succeed and return no results. Sometimes if it's that too large of a data set, it won't give you the results. Output any of the results. So again, any large queries, break those down into smaller queries step by step, use those intermediate tables to get that final data extension. And then for filter activities, avoid those overly complex filters because it does delay processing. Essentially what the automation would do is kind of overwrite your data extension, looking for that criteria again. So the more complex, the longer it is going to take to update that data extension. And then testing and validation. Again, you want to validate all your queries and your filter results with test audiences if applicable. Smaller subset of audience to just make sure you're outputting the correct results. And then maintenance and organization. Again, naming conventions for your data extensions, for your queries, for your filters, for your automation. Again, the better folder structure, the better organizational structure you have, and then also within naming conventions, the easier it is going to be to manage and organize your automations. And also archive any unused filters and queries, any other automations or data extensions that might not be in use anymore to reduce clutter. All right, so let's jump into Marketing Cloud. Just wanted to quickly show you what a query would look like, how we would start it, and how we would essentially run it within Automation Studio. Let me just pull up my. Okay, so here I have in my Automation Studio, right? So I've gone to Automation Studio, and you'll see all of your automations here, right? You can see the progress. So this is where you can even see if it's completed, your last run, if it was successful or not. And then let's say you wanted to create a new automation. So for this scenario, maybe let's say we want to deduplicate a data extension. So we're going to have a data extension that would contain all subscribers that are eligible for a nurture campaign. And then we also have a dedupe data extension. So these are the subscribers that should be excluded from that campaign. So maybe they've already been contacted, they've been flagged as we don't want to communicate with them anymore, or they've opted out of this campaign. So the query that I'm going to pull up, I actually already have it built just because save us some time here. So first thing you'll do is let's say you want to create that new automation. So here you'll see your canvas, your Automation Studio canvas. You'll see your starting sources. You'll click schedule or file dropper trigger. We'll just do schedule for now. We'll leave it as is. And then you'll see your activities, right? So actually here you'll see really a lot of the activities we talked about, right? The data import, that extract, you'll see the file transfer, you'll see the filter activity, right? And then right in the middle, you'll get the SQL query activity. So if you have two ways, right? Let's say you've already tested your query in Query Studio. You haven't created a query activity yet, which is what this step 1 is. So you can click choose. So again, if you've already created that query activity, it would be here. So I have, so let me just search for that really quickly. You'll see the query here. So let me open that again. So you'll see, and we can go back. So edit this. So you'll see all the steps here, right? Your first step when you're creating the query activity is naming the data extension. If external key, you can have your own unique external key. Marketing Cloud would automatically populate this field if not. And then your folder location. Again, super important to have these folder locations to be able to easily identify, easily find your queries, your activities. Then description. So then once you have your description and you've defined all those properties, you're going to jump into the actual query. So on the left-hand side, you'll see those data extensions. And then here within the query canvas is where you'll type in your query. So here, what you'll see and what I've typed here is, right, so the select clause is retrieving the following fields. So the subscriber key, the email address, the status field, the practice field, and a source field, again, from line 7. So from this nurture journey data extension. So that's that data extension that contains all of our subscribers that are eligible for this nurture campaign. And we're using an alias as N. Why are we using this? Is because we're combining another data extension to output that final result. So then what you'll see on the line 8 is your left join. So this left join is matching records from the nurture journey data extension with records from this dedupe list, which is our second data extension name, based on the email address field, which is what you see on line 9. So you'll see the dedupe list has an alias of D. So what you're seeing on line 9 is that it's matching the email address from nurture to the email address on the dedupe list. So your last filter here is your where clause, which again is essentially like a filter. So this is making sure that the email address, we only want to get those where the email address does not exist in the dedupe list. So that's why we have this as the D, which is the dedupe list email address, is null. Once you build out your query, you can go into your target data extension. Again, this is where it's really important to be able to have your data extension folder criteria or structures and your naming conventions clean and easily to find and identify. You can have a lot of data extensions, a lot of different folders. You have to go find that source data extension where you want to output your results into. We already chose it, and you can see here at the top that data extension. And then you have your 3 options, right? To append, update, overwrite. Depending on your use case, right? Do you want to replace the current data so it overwrites and replaces it the next time with the most up-to-date the next time it runs? Do you want to update data so it'll keep the existing data there and just keep updating on the found records? And if there's no record found, it'll create a new record for you. And then append is just adding that new data to your data extension. For this use case, we're just doing overwrite. And then you get that summary field or summary page here. So you'll see your properties on your left, that target data extension, and if we're overwriting it, so that data action, and then your query here. And something I forgot to mention here is so you'll see this green popped up. So even if you don't, before you click next to this screen, Marketing Cloud will validate the syntax. So just to make sure it is a correct syntax and it will perform, it won't run into any syntax errors. So when you click next, it'll also validate for you even if you don't click that button. So then you click finish. So you have your dedupe query there. We're just going to save this. So I'll show you. And then I also wanted to show some data filters super quickly. So we'll do that next. Then you just save. And then you also, again, as mentioned, you should test your queries out in Query Studio, but then you can also test just to make sure that it'll successfully run in Automation Studio. So you can do run once, and let's say you have multiple steps, you can be able to choose which steps, if not all steps. So we only have this step here, so you can just run this, and it'll, again, give you in your activity log, it's going to give you that automation run and give you either a success or an error message. It takes a little bit to update. As we do that, I will jump to Email Studio to walk through what a data filter would look like. Let's see if I have one. Yeah, okay, let me just pull in. All right, so you'll see in Email Studio, click into it, and then you'll get right in your subscribers tab, further down to the bottom, you'll see your data filters. So this is where you create those data filters. Again, so I mentioned earlier, right, you can specify where the data is coming from. So it's either your profile attributes or your data extensions. Especially for segmentation, you're probably going to be looking at data extensions, and that common use cases that you have some of these master data extensions and you want to gather those subset audiences. And this is where you'll choose, again, where you'll choose your already existing master data extension. For just to save us some time, I did already create one. But you'll see here, once you create it, right, you can see where your source is coming from. So that's your source data extension. And then if we click edit, this is where you'll open into your canvas. So again, drag and drop. You'll see here that I've dragged in the segment field. So if I just show you what that looks like. And then you'll notice that I've dragged it in twice. So if there's multiple values that you want to filter for using a filter criteria, you can only input one value at a time. So you will have to drag in that same field multiple times to be able to filter on multiple values. And then I also pulled in this account open status field that you'll see here. Then you'll see again that we're only typing in here. So again, make sure those values are accurate and correct. And then on your right-hand side, you'll see your and or logic, and you can group, as you'll see the segment, it's grouped. So you can group fields and make those subgroups as well. So once you have that filter or this criteria set, at the bottom, you'll see that filter text just gives you what that looks like within text, a text version, and then you would save as filter, which again, this is where that naming convention comes into play. Make sure you have an easily identifiable name and a description of this data filter, and it's going to be saved in your data filters within a specific folder, or you can create a new one. Since this is already saved, I will not save it again. But once you save it, you'll have this data filter activity. So now, how do we automate this? So let's jump back into Automation Studio. You don't want to create a data extension beforehand because a filter activity is going to create that data extension for you. So if you were to create a data extension before using it in Automation Studio, you might have just a duplicate data extension with the same data. It won't let you name it the same way, since you can't have a data extension that's named the same. Two data extensions that are named the same. But again, you don't need to create, if you're looking to automate this filter, you don't need to create a data extension after creating the filter. You'll go into Automation Studio to do so. If you're looking for a more one-off, you want to quickly grab how many customers we're pulling in here, you could create this data extension. Once you create it, within a minute, it'll refresh with the records in the data extension. If we jump to Automation Studio, let's see if this. Right, so first we'll just look at what our query, right? So you can always check this run log to see if it was complete and if it was a successful completion. And then again, here at the bottom on the left-hand side, your notification settings, you can either include some email addresses for runtime error or a skipped run only, or also for every time it's completed. Just given, depending on the cadence of how often you're running your automation, you might not, the run completion notification might get a bit heavy in your inbox. So I would say definitely the most important and the ones to look out for are those runtime errors or skipped runs notifications. So then let's go back and create an automation for that filter we just used. Again, you can name your automation, you'll have that schedule, just drag that quickly now. And then you'll drag in this filter activity. So similarly, if you've already created the filter activity, you don't need, you can find it here. If we haven't, then you would create a new filter activity. So I'm not sure if we've created it, so I'm just going to grab it here. So you can see the filter activity, the filter that we created here. I'm just going to say hands on. Again, name it, description, and then next. So this is where you're configuring the name of your output data extension. I'm just going to name it test. Hold on for now. But again, this is the name of the data extension. Once the filter runs for the first time, it's going to create this data extension for you. So that'll be the name. Again, you can add description and external key if needed, and then next summary. So this is the summary page. It's going to give you, again, your properties on the top. Right below that, you'll see your filter properties. So the definition, which is, the filter name, what type of filter type. So it's a data extension, and then more of those settings here. And then here is on the right-hand side is what your resulting data extension would look like in terms of the name, description, and external key. So we click finish. Okay. Oh, I don't have to save this. Okay. Click save. So then we'll go here into, again, you can save that and then you can run it once to just see, if it's successful. So once you run it, you can click run now, and then we should be able to see that within a minute or two. And then you would have to go back into Email Studio to find that data extension. And again, it might not be saved in the place that you have intended, so you would have to maybe move it to a different folder or a different section of your data extension structures. All right. I'll leave it now for any questions that folks may have. I'm looking in the chat to see if there's any questions. I do see one here. All right. So question was, how would you determine when to use a filter activity versus a SQL query for audience segmentation, particularly in scenarios requiring complex data relationships with transformation? Does it always come down to what one is more comfortable with, or are there best practices around it? So Lily, from your question here, especially, it looks like there's complex data relationships or transformation that need to happen. I would recommend the query. SQL query. Data filter works well for, again, less criteria, less data being used or that needs to be manipulated. The complexity, I would say, is where you would have to identify, we're joining maybe 3 data extensions, we're transforming data. A query would give you that output, where the data filter, you might not even be able to achieve that. So really the best practices would be able to identify the complexity of it. So if it's more than one data extension that you need to use, you have to use query. You can't really join 2 data extensions using a data filter. If you need to have complex filter criteria using multiple fields, multiple values, multiple fields from different data extensions. So from your joins, again, query. Data filters are definitely more for those more basic, simple criteria that you want to filter for. Great. I think those are all the questions. Any other questions? No, we have a few minutes. No, I'll give those 7 minutes back.
So everyone will have the option to unmute themselves. If you wanna unmute and then ask the question directly, you're welcome to. I think that is it, Michelle. Thank you.
Hi, Jimmy.
Thanks, everyone. We hope to
Thanks.
see you again next
Thanks.
Thursday.
Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.
Hello.
Bye.
Thank you.
Yeah. Abhilash, you have any question?
Yes, Jimmy, I just was curious to look at the playlist. So it is not updated on the YouTube channel. Can you just help?
Right, I'll do that at the earliest possible, Abhilash.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Michelle. Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone.